I call this meeting of Planning and Zoning Regular Commission meeting to order at 6:33. Let it know that there is a quorum present. Public comments, non-agenda item public comments, white cards, comments will be taken from the audience on non-agenda related topic for the length of time to not exceed 3 minutes per person. Agenda item public comment, yellow card, comments will be taken from the audience on non-agenda and agenda item combined for the length of time to not to exceed 5 minutes per total per person on all items. Exceed for public hearings. Comment on public hearing items must be made with item comes before the board, commission, committee, and not to exceed 2 minutes per person. Non-action or discussion may be taken by the board, commission, committee during public comments or non-agenda item. To address the board, commission, committee, please complete the white and yellow and present the item to the city staff designated prior to the meeting. Going on to public hearing, conduct a public hearing on a rezoning application for one lot on 0.9596 acres, more or less, and being located at 13100 Greenberry Drive, Maynard, Texas, from a SF2 single family standard to C1 light commercial. We do have Paige Bacon, does not wish to speak, but is here for questions, commissioners.
So this item is a rezoning for what is intended to be a portion of the Maynard Commons Northeast commercial tract. It was initially supposed to be rezoned after annexation some time ago, but it was for some reason left out. So to tie that up, this rezoning is being taken care of now to make the whole portion commercial as opposed to the majority of it and then the SF2 on the corner.
Do you have any questions, commissioners? Take a motion to.
I move we close the public hearing on item 1.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stenslin, a second by Vice Chair Chavis. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Moving on, public hearing. Number 2, conduct a public hearing on rezoning application for one lot on 51.30 acres, more or less, and being located at 14704 US Highway 290, Maynard, Texas, from SF1 single family suburban and A agriculture to C3 commercial. I do have a Daryl Swinson. Would you like to come up? Would you like to speak, Mr. Durham?
I was going to speak. Is somebody going to explain or argue for the rezoning?
So the way it works is you guys speak and then they'll explain it. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So you want to come up?
Yes, sir.
And I have 5 minutes or 2 minutes?
2. Yes, sir. For this item 2.
Okay. My sister and I own the property just north of this proposed development and also along Old Kimbrough Road just to the east. Cottonwood Creek runs directly through the middle of this property. There have been 200-year floods in the last 35 years of Cottonwood Creek, maybe more that I'm not aware of, but I was there for 2 of them. And I want to know if that there has been some sort of study on how the drainage of Cottonwood Creek is going to be affected by this development, and if there's a concern where the development could cause further backup of the drainage of the creek and affect our property. The other part of the floodplain is that with the creek running directly through the middle of the property, if it does flood, does the property become uninhabitable and the owner abandons it, and then we have an eyesore of something that was started and then nothing came of it. The other issue that I had, so that's the floodplain, and issue number 2 is FM 1100. You know, it's very busy. It's just a two-lane road. If this is heavy commercial as it says, and that means there's going to be quite a bit of traffic that could possibly be accessing through Old Kimbrough Road. If 1100 is not widened, then does it create even more of a backlog, a log jam of people trying to get onto the Highway 290 because now there's extra traffic? Has that been considered? Has there been good argument for leaving 1100 the way it is, or are there plans to widen 1100, at least up to Old Kimbrough Road? That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. I also have R.J. Mason.
R.J. Mason, I have the property at 14601C US Highway 290 East, which is directly across 290 from the subject property. Like my predecessor, I have concerns about the effect of the additional traffic on what's already a pretty congested area. More than that, I'm not sure what kinds of development the C3 heavy commercial contemplates. I have no idea what kind of development they're proposing for this. So these are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. That's all the yellow cards we have. Mr. Michael.
So this rezoning is to allow for C3 heavy commercial, which is our most permissive zoning category. In their letter of intent, they do specify that they intend to have commercial lots on the southwestern corner, and then in the floodplain area above it that is intended to be RV park or something that is able to be done in the floodplain. And I will save further comments and discussion for the regular agenda item.
Unfortunately, you can't during this time. Yes, sir. We have a motion, commissioners, to close public hearing number 2.
I move approval, or I move we close the public hearing on item 2.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stetslin. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second by Commissioner Neela. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed. Moving on to public hearing number 3, conduct a public hearing on rezoning application for 7 lots on 146.92 acres, more or less, and being generally located abundant and to the north Hill Lane, west of Greg Maynard Road, and east of the Texas 130 toll, Maynard, Texas, from A, agriculture to IN-2 heavy industrial. I don't have any yellow cards.
This rezoning is for the Maynard Downs property just down Hill Lane. It is a rezoning to industrial heavy IN2, and it's concurrent with finishing up their annexation process. So once things are done, once they're annexed, they'll already have their zoning, so they can start with their actual development process from their preliminary plats to their final plat, construction plan, site plan. This is just to make sure the process flows smoothly.
Do I have a motion to close agenda item, public hearing number 3?
I move to close agenda item number 3.
I have a motion by Commissioner Terry. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Stetson. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Moving on, consent agenda items. All of the following items on consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the P&Z Commission and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless requested by the chair or a commissioner, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Moving on, consent agenda item number 4. Considering discussion and possible action to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes for the January 8th, 2025 Planning and Zoning regular session.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stetson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Neela. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, regular agenda item number 5. Considering discussion and possible action on rezoning application for one lot on 0.9596 acres, more or less, and being located at 13100 Greenberry Drive, Maynard, Texas, from SF2 single family standard to C1 light commercial. Commissioners, we do have Paige Bacon here for discussion if needed for this agenda. Mr. Michael.
To reiterate, this is a property that was already supposed to be rezoned. It just slipped through the cracks, so that process is being handled now. The adjacent parcel, which is Maynard Commons Northeast Commercial, is already zoned. So this is just to correct the discrepancy between the two properties.
Mr. Burrow, will this be folded into that larger tract development? It'll be contiguous. It'll be treated as a contiguous parcel.
Yes,
Once zoned.
the intent will be for the entire thing to be zoned for C1 light commercial. It'll be a commercial tract.
Okay.
Was there a reason to break this out from the rest of it?
It was supposed to be rezoned some time ago. It just didn't. It was a lapse of attention.
It was not zoned at the same time.
No, sir.
And the section on the eastern side of this, of Greenberry Drive, will that also be eventually rezoned, or is it going to remain? It's SF2 adjacent to
That's
the,
a pond.
oh, that is a pond. Okay, thank you. That's right. It's a detention. Thank you. I have no questions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 5.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Myers. Do I have a second?
A second.
A second by Commissioner Stetslin. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to regular agenda item, consider discussion and possible action on rezoning application for one lot, 51.30 acres, more or less, and being located at 14704 US Highway 290, Maynard, Texas, from SF1 single family suburban and A agriculture to C3 heavy commercial. Mr. Michael.
Yes, so to answer some community member questions and potentially alleviate some concerns, especially when it comes to traffic, any development that comes within the city, in our city limits, there's something called a traffic impact analysis that needs to be conducted with your development. If you exceed a certain amount of trips, there are certain mitigations and improvements that need to be made to whatever roadway you are impacting to ensure that you're not causing unwarranted traffic burdens. Now, as for what can go on this tract, I couldn't tell you. Zoning does not make you specify what your intent is when zoned. It just gives you essentially a laundry list of things that you can do once zoned. I can tell you the intent currently is to have 8 lots, I believe. 8 lots, yeah, it's 9 lots. So 8 lots commercial on the southwestern corner, which is not in the floodplain. And then the floodplain is intended for some use that is allowed to be in the floodplain. My understanding is they want to, well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the developers though. RV park on the back end, because that is something that is possible in a floodplain zone. But as for what the uses are outside of that, I can't speak to that. Now, with C3 zoning, it is our most permissive zoning category, which I have detailed in the backup summary form. And that allows for a lot of things by right, including but not limited to gas stations, storage units, certain light industrial uses. And that is something to heavily consider when you look at this property, especially in comparison to our future land use map and the idea of this being a commercial corridor.
Is the applicant here or an agent for the applicant? Can you explain why you, thank you for coming in. I'll ask you to introduce yourself. Can you help us understand, the letter of intent outlines wanting to pursue recreational vehicle park, RV park, as part of the commercial items on here, which is allowed in C2, medium commercial. Can you explain why you chose to request C3 instead of C2?
Yeah, my name is Jose Lozano. I'm with LJ Engineering in support of this rezone. And we, at this point, have no defined uses for what is intended to be there. And for the purpose that he brought up, it would left the biggest window to what could be put there. We intend to keep an open space through the floodplain. And as every other development, we would have to provide the adequate improvements and convey drainage to not have any impacts to any adjacent properties. And that is at a later phase. So at this point, we are just securing the zoning to allow for the future process for this. Now, the RV park is the only thing we at this time that is known, that is the intention, and that would be going in a majority of the floodplain. That any of that improvements would have to be designed in ways to not impact any adjacent or downstream properties. And yeah,
Is it my understanding that basically the floodplain is all of Lot 9?
that is correct.
And do you have anything specifically in mind for lots 1 through 8?
No, at this time, there's no known use for these sites. And I do want to reiterate that the southwest corner is already in your corridor, your commercial corridor for your future land use.
Would that be a problem if it was C2 instead of C3 for for any of it?
I'd have to get back to you on changing the request, but we would prefer to keep a C3 zoning, but I could not answer that at this time.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because generally speaking, most uses that are in C3 are also in C2. They're just a handful of things that would not be. So that's the reason I'm asking if there's something specific that's to C3 that you can't do in C2. It would be nice to know.
Yeah. I think if we'd discuss this with the developer and if it would be a more palatable thing, then we might consider what if that would be a better route. But at this time, we would like to keep pursuing.
More specifically, the reason I'm asking is it's
Yes.
the only portion of the property that is adjacent to an existing subdivision, residential area. So that's my specific reason for asking that.
Yeah, and any end uses would that on these developments would be following your existing ordinances, buffers, whatever kind of requirements are meant to be or expected to be there are fully intended to be put to follow your current ordinances.
Mr. Burrell, can you, the tract just west of this, I think it's 2 lots west of this, which is in the Turners, we just had this recently. Is that, I know it's part of the PUD, but is it essentially following C2 or C1? That'd be the phase 6 of Manor Heights.
I believe it'd be C2 for that portion of Manor Heights,
Okay,
the replat that we just had.
thank you.
So my question would be also like my community members here. One thing that we're experiencing is the traffic and the flow of the traffic. Are you guys going to look to work on helping alleviate that traffic? Because
Pardon me,
go ahead.
if I may, this is still a zoning case. We cannot ask questions about potential site development as there's no specific uses detailed in this. So any questions have to pertain to the zoning or the use. It cannot pertain to traffic or grading or anything site related or development related, if you will.
So, okay.
And to follow on him, anything to propose to be developed would have to follow your existing requirements, and in that proving out what impacts that would have to the transportation infrastructure. questions for me.
Commissioners, we have any other questions?
No.
You have one, Commissioner Tavis?
Not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. Looking at the permissive uses, we've gone down this road before on applicants requiring or asking for C3, and there's a large laundry list of permissive uses, and considering its proximity to the adjacent properties, namely a single family next to it. Definitely, there are some uses I'm not inclined to approve on this. What difference between C3 and C2 you have, adult-oriented businesses, and that would be in the back door of someone's house. So looking at, exactly what your developer on what's contemplated to be in these areas is essential to asking, for C3 and not exactly knowing what is there or what you are contemplating right now and asking us to approve, blanketed for that. And somewhere down the road, we can talk about doing something else. So that's just a comment here for the dais to contemplate as we're looking at, this particular agenda item. There are some other items of permissive uses, for C3 versus C2 or any other, zoning district that I think you need to look at before making a decision whether to approve or disapprove or approve with conditions, or even postpone until additional information. I think you have all that to your disposal to decide as we're looking at that. In regards to some of the comments earlier, that's I think some more engineering considerations definitely would need to be taking place, and for this floodplain, it's going what it is north and south of that entire property. We've dealt with this in regards to an apartment complex previously, where there's definitely major concerns of the improvements or what is like the site placement, in addition to what was contemplating to be on their property, and being major roads, especially when we're dealing with either state or county roads versus city roads. And that's for the edification of everyone here. We have no jurisdiction over the state and county roads, but we want to make sure that when in our approval process and coordination, that those things happen, with either the state or the county, POCs, so that when we get to it, like those decisions and the plans, that we can actually see and agree to it, and that way it can abide by our city plans moving forward and comprehensive plans, that it all works out together. All right. So even if you go through the TIA and it states certain things because it's a state road, we need to look at those things in order to make sure that it complies with what our requirements and thoughts are too, on that. So that's my comments. If you saw a question in all of that, you can answer to it, but I'll leave it to that.
Staff, I have one question related to your staff recommendation, which, by the way, was posted Friday and calls for C2 as the recommended zoning. So I want that to be at least on the record that that's been posted since Friday as the recommendation for this from staff for this parcel. So coming forward with knowledge of that. If C2 was to be recommended for this property, would gasoline station limited and gasoline station full service, since they're special use permit requirement, they'd still have to come back for an approval to have those specific uses if they were included in the recommendation?
Yes, since in the use guide there is an S or C
Yes.
listed next to it, specific use permit does require this to come back before P&Z and the council in order to be approved for.
Conditional uses do not require that additional layer of approval because they are permitted by there, as long as they meet the conditions of site plan. And
Yes,
that-
if they meet the conditions set within our zoning ordinance, then they are allowed to proceed
Within
as
allowances.
designed. Now,
Thank
if there's an S, that is specific use, which does require an appearance before the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the council.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioners, do we have any more other questions?
Do you want to do it?
You got it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve agenda item 6 under a C2 zone.
I have a motion by Commissioner Meyer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Stetson. All in favor? Raise your hand. Opposed? Motion passes 5-1. Unfortunately, at this time, no, sir. But if you want to wait till the end of the meeting, my gentleman at the end will surely love to answer your questions. Moving on to agenda item 11, consider discussion and possible action on rezoning application
I
for
believe
seven.
that's item number 7.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Agenda item 7, consider discussion and possible action on rezoning application for 7 lots on 146.92 acres, more or less, and being generally located abundant on to the north of Hill Lane, west of Greg Maynard Road, and east of Tex 130 Toll, Maynard, Texas, from agriculture to IN-2 heavy industrial. Staff.
So to reiterate, this is the old Maynard Downs property. It is currently being annexed into our city limits, and while it is not contemplated in our future land use map because it wasn't in our city limits, it is in an area that is saturated with industrial uses currently. To the south of Hill Lane, we have a few industrial buildings, and then the other tracks around it are contemplated for that as well. So it does fall in line with the theme for the area.
So I have a question, and just showing how long I've been here. So as it being Maynard Downs, wasn't that already like a public, like, I wouldn't realize that would be agriculture. I mean, I understand it was a horse racing track, but wouldn't that already be some kind of commercial or industry, something already?
So the history that was painted out to me is that while this was initially in the city limits, it was then transferred to, well, Veronica looks like she has something to say. She can paint it better. I can.
Commissioners, excuse me, Veronica Rivera, Assistant City Attorney. With regard to your question, this property actually has not been annexed by the city of Maynard. There may have been some transactions in the past where it was removed from the city limits, or possibly, even though it said Maynard Downs, it was never in the city limits. So it was actually in Austin's ETJ, the city of Austin's ETJ, and through state statute, the owners of this piece of property have requested it to be disannexed, and now they're going through the process of annexation. I believe y'all have seen this before. When we go through annexation, you do come to P&Z, but before we can zone, we annex the property at the same time. That's the first item, and then we do the zoning, but we do go through P&Z first as well.
Thank you, ma'am. I did know that it wasn't in the city of Maynard. I've known that forever. But yeah, I just knew that it was always called Maynard Downs. But yeah, that's funny.
Staff, is this Is IN2 in line with the council's vision for this? They were talking about this last week at their council meeting about incorporating this and possibly finding like some sort of possible mixed use development for this, or is that not?
So the council is aware of the intended use for the property as well as
Okay.
the preliminary layout of what's intended to be there. There's also discussion of dedication or conveyance of a lot for parkland, which would be a potential amenity for the community.
Mhm.
I don't want to say what amenity because I would hate to set expectations.
And
but
IN2 conform, as you noted in the backup, IN2 does conform to that vision.
yes,
All right, thank you.
That was kind of my question too. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Other questions?
I move to approve agenda item number 7.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Chavis to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Terry. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to regular agenda item number 8, consider discussion and possible action on drainage waiver request for Boyce Street mixed-use development located at 101, 104, 107, and 108 Boyce Street, Maynard, Texas.
so
Staff.
this one's a fun one because even though the request follows the Austin Drainage Criteria Manual, this is a detention waiver request, not a drainage waiver request. And due to the incorrect agenda posting, this will need to be postponed until the next meeting.
All right, Commissioners. Oh,
Apologies, Veronica Rivera, Assistant City Attorney. The item is actually pulled.
okay.
Thank you. My apologies.
All right, moving on. Regular agenda item number 9, consider discussion and possible action on subdivision short form final plat for FM 1100 Manor, 12 being one lot on 12.62 acres, more or less, and being located at the northeast intersection of US Highway 290 and FM 1100 Manor, Texas. Staff.
This is a plat that's off of Walker Lane and FM 1100. It's just turning it into a one lot as opposed to the prior configuration. It's been reviewed and approved by engineers, so yeah. This is a non-discretionary item.
I move approval of item 9.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stetslin. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Vice Chair Chavis. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn planning and zoning meeting at 7:11?
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Chavis. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Stetslin. All in favor? Opposed?